If you were to look at the things that rated highest every night on subscription TV, so stuff on Foxtel, you would find that most of it each night would be sport. Sport is one of the main things keeping Foxtel and subscription TV in Australia alive. So it is interesting then that Foxtel have launched their own streaming service dedicated to sport. It's called Kayo. I don't know why I said it like that, but let's commit to it. To debate whether it's good, whether it's not, whether it has a future, we have our panel this week. Olivia Rosenman is a journalist. She's an audio producer. She's very, very smart. And Ariel Bogle is a technology journalist who you can hear across the ABC. So, Ariel, just if I was to lay out the offering currently presented by Foxtel and their streaming services and whatnot, and Kayo Sport, how do the two compare?
I guess the KO Sports is really aimed at being a platform to deliver a sort of more intuitive experience around sports. I've seen that they've got like a no spoiler mode. So if you're catching up on, football games that have already been played, you can turn this on so you don't get cheated out of the emotion.
That. You just have to turn off every other piece of technology in your life. But sure.
There's a whole bunch of really cute features like replaying things and the ability to slow them down and split screens. And if someone who doesn't know anything about sport, that seems
they seem like good things. Yeah.
At least that, judging by all the YouTube soccer highlights my dad watches, that's what people want.
Yeah.
Slow down and highlights.
And that does appear to be the overwhelming response I've seen from people that are like deep sport nerds, which is that they have taken a lot of some of the more cultish behaviour around sports watching and they've folded it into the app, and you have to kind of go, well, that's very clever. So Kayo will set you back either $25 or $35 per month.
Gosh, that seems phenomenally expensive to me. Is that what sports people pay?
That was my first reaction too, and then I considered the fact that sports rights, like locally within Australia, they're quite expensive. But then you've got to consider that with the Foxtel package, you've got to pay for the baseline package, and then you've got to pay for sports on top. So it's essentially half the price. And actually, I was talking to Simon, who is the guy that records us and makes us sound like we sound pretty. And he was saying there are some technical glitches as well, that it crashes a lot and it doesn't remember where you are. And I thought it doesn't remember where you are is like every service remembers where you are now, right? Like, how does that not work?
Yeah,
it's a weird one. I guess interesting too, because I feel like over the recent years we've had a debate about exactly how many streaming platforms one country can sustain with a population,
especially a small
population. Yeah. So it makes sense that niche providers like exclusive sports providers would potentially be able to get a toehold, especially one that has good sports deals.
As we move into a streaming environment, right, the way we have sold streaming services in the last 5 years has been on pretty much one kind of content, and that's premium drama. So like that big blue chip drama, your House of Cards. And then certainly Netflix have built a strong model for like live comedy and for documentaries. But news and current affairs content is a big grey area that I don't think anyone has really properly cracked how you make that work in the streaming environment.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of big legacy news print news organisations have sort of cracked that subscription and that idea that you will pay a subscription to your one trusted news source. I mean, most famously, the New York Times has done very well in moving a whole bunch of their readers over to dedicated subscribers. It's weird, but people still do watch TV. I shouldn't say that.
No,
they
do.
I
mean, they do,
it makes perfect sense to pay for good quality TV news in the same way that you pay for good quality print news.
What is interesting, though, is seeing how, I guess Netflix is the market leader here, seeing how Netflix has tried to experiment in doing topical content. And the two shows that stand out to me are, and actually what they've done is they've partnered with news organisations. So Netflix has a show with BuzzFeed called Follow This. And then they have a show with Vox Media called Explained. And Explained is brilliant. They take one idea and they explore it over 15 minutes.
And there's now the Hassan Minhaj. It's sort of...
Patriot Act, yeah.
Patriot Act. It's sort of, the closest comparison is John Oliver's Tonight?
Last Week Tonight.
Last Week Tonight, that's on HBO.
I'm really curious to know whether anybody can make streaming news or on-demand news and current affairs work, because I don't see a model for it out there in a subscription TV lean-back model.
You could argue that the New York Times, the daily podcast, obviously it's not TV, but they've sort of invested a whole bunch of money in making this very high-quality daily product in that psychology at the beginning of the day rather than at the end. And there are a whole lot of podcasts sort of becoming TV shows, and I feel like I've maybe even heard rumours of the Daily doing some sort of TV version, but It's hard to remember.
I would say the Daily, though, I mean, maybe it started at the beginning as a wrap of the day, but certainly the recent month of episodes have had no bearing on the news of the day. Just this morning, I listened to their latest episode, which was about the rise of China, and it was a great episode. It's sort of a history of China post-Mao in a nutshell, but it had nothing to do with the news of the day.
Do a deep dive of an idea.
Exactly. And that ties in with the deep dive they're doing across their print stuff as well. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. They're moving away from that because they're really just loving the whole deep dive documentary thing. But they used to be much more. And when something big happens, they will kind of stop.
They give a little wrap, in the last minute or so of the news of the day. But most recently, it's been the reporters talking about the investigative pieces or big projects like New York Times China Project.
Which is interesting, though, because as I get older and more grumpy...
Wait, you can get more grumpy than this?
I know, it can happen. You should see me first thing in the morning. I don't know if it's increasing, but there is this idea out there that like breaking news is not good, is not really good for us, is not useful for us. Obviously, there are certain situations where it are. I mean, maybe where it is. Maybe that we're sort of this idea that we are moving towards more sort of analysis, deep dive stuff rather than like headline breaking news stuff that often isn't entirely relevant or helps to...
No, I see where you're going, but I guess we've maybe just traded that behaviour where instead of having CNN or ABC News 24 in the corner, maybe it's push notifications on your phone that replicate some of that behaviour. All right, there is lots more of that in the podcast of Download This Show. It is available right now on whichever podcasting app you happen to use. We'll see you then. Bye.